So, in the month of November, I am talking to men about issues that I think are unique to men but impact us all. And I think that there are quite a few topics out there that we're just not talking about. And I think that they need to be discussed. I think that there's some conversations in little pockets, but I wanted to have some conversations with men that I trust and see if we can put some interesting discourse out there in the ramp up to International Men's Day, which is November 19th. Because it turns out 364 days of the year aren't International Men's Day. There is one day that is International Men's Day. So today I'm talking to my friend Hank, and we met through a mutual friend and have stayed friends all these years. And you are someone that I know will straight shoot and tell me the truth about what you think, and that you'll have an opinion. So I would love for you to introduce yourself a little, and then we'll dive in on and talk about men.
Oh, yeah, I'm a man.
You're
Yes,
men.
I'm a man. Henk, I live out in Seattle. This is not a Pacific Northwest accent, surprisingly enough. Yeah, out from South Africa, and I think that's a key part of who I am as well, because it's very male, very, very male. Grew up on a farm, very, very male, so I think the biggest thing, and for me, is like I have two daughters, and that defines who I am, and every lesson that I have learned and still learning, to try and become a more complete human being, that mythical place that will never be achieved, is because I have two daughters,
Yeah.
two amazing daughters.
Yeah. No, I think that's so huge. And it's interesting because when you said that about being from South Africa, I was like in my head doing the mental checklist of all the men I know from South Africa, most of whom I love dearly, but all of whom are pretty like dead on masculine dudes, right? They're guys, and they played
Yeah.
rugby and they did this and I'm like, do you guys not have any of the others, right? It's not
No,
allowed.
we don't have. I was literally before this call on a Reddit subgroup around rugby.
See?
It's like rugby and meat.
Right. It's like, welcome to South Africa.
Exactly, exactly. It
No.
is, but I think it's more in your face in South Africa, but I think the whole world is actually like
Yes.
that. It's like
Yeah.
we think like, oh no, they're not like that in France, and they're not like that there. Like, no, they're all like that.
They are.
They're just
Yeah.
they're just in slightly different ways. South Africa's, I think Australia as well, and New Zealand, like it's just a little bit more in your face,
Sure.
but
Sure.
it's like that. But we all carry the same kind of baggage.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. And I think, one of the things that really, so I read an article a few months ago. I mean, the title of the article was literally "The Men and the Boys, They're Not All Right." And it was, and basically his whole premise was like, boys are starting to fail in school. They're starting to fall behind. They're dropping out at higher rates. They're getting lower scores. Women are getting more degrees. Like there's this shift happening, and it's easy in some circles of the male population to blame women and say, "Oh, it's women's fault that their boys are falling behind." And I'm like, also there's a whole system of patriarchy that's not serving any of us,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so
yeah.
I'm just curious, like when you think about you have raised daughters and you've moved all over the world, you've seen different structures. Like, what do you think has shifted? Do you think anything has shifted over these last, decades that is making for more isolation and maybe solitude for men than there was before?
Yeah, it has. I think that where I don't necessarily always agree is that it's fundamentally because men are different. I think
Yeah,
it's partly because men don't have the coping mechanisms.
sure.
Like men have been assholes for centuries, like starting wars,
Yeah.
uh, slavery, all of those things are mostly white men. If we look at history, like
Mhm.
colonialism, all those things, like this big ego, I got to control.
Yeah.
But we now live in a world where that's not possible anymore. You can't just control. But what they haven't been able to do is adapt.
Yeah.
Most men haven't been able to adapt. And then when we look at kids, no one is helping them adapt. No
Right.
one is really giving them the skills
Right.
to do critical thinking. Like I'm in the US, and what blows my mind is the complete lack of critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
that's a fun, and if you don't have that, you won't know how to cope with things. So it's men have stayed the same. So they fail, and
Mm,
all of these things happen because they haven't changed.
yeah,
The world has changed,
right.
and not enough of men have changed and don't have the skills to be able to know, like, how the hell do you change? Like, you, I'm not going to advise everyone just have two daughters, and that'll.
Right. Good luck staying the same with two daughters, right?
Exactly, exactly. But I think it's also men are as brave as what they try and act to be, are actually pretty scared of the world.
Yeah,
Like the reason why men react with violence is because they're scared,
yeah,
because they don't want change. Change is scary.
yeah,
And so they don't want change, so they react with more violence towards society.
yeah.
Um, instead of being open. Like the fact that I have two daughters, also the biggest influence in my life when I was little was my mom, because my dad was an arsehole. No
Mm.
surprise there. Um, but it taught me that, like, all the major influences outside of Nelson Mandela, all the major influences in my life has been mostly women.
Yeah,
To be able to do that, the biggest gift that I've been given through all of those women is just like, know nothing, be open to anything, just learn and question. Like my mom taught me from when I was little, just like just question. And she was not a liberal by any
hmm,
stretch of the imagination, but she told me, like, just keep on questioning until you get to a place where you're like, I believe this.
right,
Uh, and but most men don't. Like, they
right,
don't like being open.
right. Well, and I think one of the things you said that really strikes me is like we're using old models in a new world. We've changed very little about the model of, how the world is run, patriarchy, all the structures. We're using old ways of thinking and old models in a world that is much faster, just like running at a speed that we're not prepared for, and requires you to unpack change quickly,
Yeah.
right? And we're not evolving evolutionarily.
Yeah.
We're like, I'm still this way, right? And it's like, well, that's
Yeah.
not going to work,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. It's it's not. I wouldn't say it's like as if woman has unlocked an answer,
No.
but it's just a case of, like, men has been so static.
Yeah.
Like they work within the knowns. So it's like, I know this. So even when you think of great innovations, it happens within knowns.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen like an outside force, like very few, and that's why it
Very few.
stands out when, like, an Einstein comes, something like, oh shit, this guy isn't normal. Um, but we safe in the knowns,
Yeah.
and that's our safe zone. So all of a sudden, the world throwing different things at us is like, oh shit, hang on, oh shit, hang on.
Yeah.
And it's not the one or two, it's the constant. And then you have to be really comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Right.
And men aren't comfortable with being uncomfortable. Why? Because of other men.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other men tells you, like in rugby, like, you the hooker. I was a hooker in rugby. Please note. No,
Did you hear what he said, everyone? No, I'm just kidding.
it's like you have a role to play. It's
Yeah.
like, and you work together as a team, and, like, don't step out of that line. And it's everything is like that. If you look at how, I mean, the patriarchy. If you look at how we manage companies today, even when we have women leadership, it's big monkey on top, troop follows. It's like the typical male structure. If you look at what we watch on television, everything, it's still so dominant because it men like safety
Right.
as much as what they think they're brave.
Right.
They're physically brave. Emotionally,
Yeah.
men aren't generally very brave.
Right. Right. Well, it's interesting because a lot of the conversations I've been having, what men have said is it's too risky to be brave with one another and like too risky to be open to communicate as men to other men. And I am like, I don't even know what that means because women, we use groupthink to make our lives work. Like if I have a problem, I'm gonna call my sister or call Heidi or call whomever
Yeah.
and say like, hey, have you ever had this experience when you were going through menopause? Has this ever happened to you? Has this ever, we have babies, raise babies, and have lives based on groupthink. We talk to each
Yeah.
other, right?
Yeah.
And we gather opinions and go, oh, okay. We may still do the wrong thing. We may still do a stupid thing. I'm not saying we make good decisions
Yeah.
necessarily, but I will have. I mean, I just yesterday reached out to my sister and was like, hey, should I do this or this? And it was a medical thing. And she's
Yeah.
like, I mean, you should go with your gut, but I did this. And
Yeah.
that's it. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, men don't often have those kinds of conversations with each other.
No, yeah, I agree. Like even I don't have those conversations. You know,
Right.
I don't. So what happens is I don't I flipped it completely the other way around. Instead of having conversations with other men, I go like, well, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to be held accountable to other people at all. I'm not going to let other opinions
Right.
affect me. So I don't care about, so it becomes I don't care about titles or the
Right.
rules or anything like that. So I'm going to
Right.
reject all of that because I don't actually have a place to go. And also because I'm not religious, I don't have a place where I can go to and go like, okay, I'm going to talk there.
Right.
So the only way I can do it is by constantly taking in what I see from outside and then filtering it through. And then the people I can talk to are women. And it's not like I have deep conversations, but it's more a case of like reflecting on what I hear
Yeah.
and saying because it just men just don't talk that way. You
Right.
know, like every now and again I'll have a conversation with a close friend, etc. But it's not. It's like
Right.
it's just not something men do.
Right.
And I don't even know if and I'm because I'm male, I'll say this. I don't even know if I want that. To be
Right.
honest, I don't
Sure.
even know if I want to have those conversations because I'm really happy in knowing nothing.
Sure.
I'm really comfortable with looking at the wall and go like, I know nothing.
Right.
So I'm going to look at something and apply the rule. Are you being an arsehole or not?
Right.
Like that's my rule. It's
Yeah.
like if you an arsehole to someone else,
Yeah.
that's the rule.
Yeah.
Or when in doubt, it's like, what would Mandela do?
Right.
It's like
It's always good to
that's
fall back on. Right. That's a
exactly
good one.
that's what I'll do. But then having daughters has helped me look at it through the eyes like, so what do I want? How
Mm.
do I want my daughter to be treated?
Right.
You know, what role do I want her? Many, many years ago, I just got to the US. It was like 2006, 2007. So a guy called Jeffrey Schwartz, who was the CEO of Timberland. Before I worked with him, I was listening at this conference where he was talking, and he was talking about his supply chain. I said, like, so tell me, why do you have these really good supply chain rules, like on how workers are treated? And his answer was, and I was like, damn, that's smart. He said, I have daughters, I have kids. So the way I look at it is, how would I want the parent of my kids to be treated?
Mhm.
If that is the parent of my kids working in that shop, how
Yeah.
do I want them to be impacted? It's like,
Wow.
yeah, that
Yeah.
was that was a key insight for me, and it says a lot about his leadership.
Yeah.
Was to try and look at it through the eyes of my kids. And I'm also lucky that I'm married to someone who is not shy to
What?
share an opinion.
For those of you who don't know, I'm friends with his wife too. So
Yeah.
I sit in their
And
kitchen while they bicker. It's my favorite. Right.
exactly. But that also helped me. You know, it's
Yeah.
also helped me to, even when I think like, no, I was right, to actually sit back and go like, was I?
Yeah.
Because the world's not actually black and white. You
Right.
know, it's like there are very, very few things that's completely black and white. There are
Right.
certain things. Nazis bad. Like,
Right.
yes. Like we don't have to have a debate. There's
You
no
don't have
two
to go
sides to
check,
this guy.
check, check,
It's
check.
like
Right.
but most of the world isn't like that. Like
Right.
most of the world don't happen in the fringes. It happens in the middle.
Right.
Um, so then it comes to that kind of what, listening to what my daughters and wife has to say, and then also the no arsehole rule. Like that for me is like the easiest rule,
Yeah.
is the no
Yeah.
arsehole rule.
No, totally. No, it makes total sense. And I think, the other thing that I think you said that really strikes me, going back a bit, like, I do think that there's an interesting reaction that happens when men are afraid that they lash out, right? And I think there is this, and women do it too. I'm not saying women don't lash out when they're afraid, but there's a different structure that happens there. And I think we're seeing, I think, like if people had a no asshole rule, right? If we all said like we're just gonna have this be the rule, then even when you're afraid, you would say, "Hey, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna look at the situation, and I'm gonna make my next decision based on that. I'm not gonna be an asshole, right?
Yeah.
No matter how afraid I am of what's happening, the input, my output isn't going to match, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think it's really fascinating because I think so, like men, I was reading a statistic that talked about, um, so men are like 1 man every minute is committing suicide globally, but women still attempt suicide more. Men just are
Yeah.
more successful, right?
Yeah.
And some of that is even the
Good at
violence.
something.
Good job, fellas, right? Like, but I'm fascinated by that because like it means that even in the midst of making that decision, they go hard with the
Yeah.
violent side, right? Like they're so afraid even of whatever change is happening in themselves that they're like, I will be successful at ending this,
Yeah.
right? And there's just such a like I wish that there was a way, and I think there are ways. I think it's about, like you said, I think some of it is having some boundaries and some rules, having people in your life who you can actually, discuss things with, but also just deciding that change is inevitable and that isn't there's no accusation in it. It just
Yeah.
happens, right?
Yeah. And we can do it as we can also do it as leaders in businesses, and as to, without getting too philosophical with people, but as to teach them that it's okay to do things that's out of your comfort zone,
Yeah.
like in work, because once you do it in one safe area, it starts playing out in other areas,
Yeah.
because it's like, well, if I can push the boundaries here and learn new things, then hey, I can actually do it here, and I can do it here, and I can do it here, and then you start opening up, and the beauty, we need to embrace and somehow teach people the beauty of uncertainty. There's a deep beauty in that, of saying like, I have no idea where I'm going to land up, but this is one incredible journey. Again, the fact that I'm not religious is both a con and a pro. But the
Sure.
pro for me is that I don't have an end goal.
Right.
My end goal is just like constantly learn and take this amazing fucking ride that we have here. This is,
Right.
because this is amazing. But when we have these institutions that tells us you've got to live this way and this is your role, etc.,
Yeah.
you don't get an opportunity to explore. You
Right.
don't get an opportunity to go like, who am I really?
Right.
Who am I? And what parts of me do I want, not change, but what parts of me do I want to poke at a little
Right.
bit?
What do I want to, what would I like to learn about myself? Like
Yeah.
one of the things that I love about, I mean, one of the reasons that I care about equality and feminism is that I want to be all of myself and I want you to be all of yourself.
Yeah.
I don't want you to change. I don't want you to feel like you have to change. But I also, because I'm a woman who, because of the career I've had and the way I was raised and a lot, I have traits that put me on the edge of what is acceptable femininity because I'm
Yeah.
direct. I say I have an opinion. I'm not shy. I will tell you I think you're wrong. I will tell you you're stupid. Right? Like I am on the edge of that. And if I'm not allowed to be all the way to the edge with my way of being a woman in the world, then how would a man show up in a different way than is the straight line acceptable way?
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
want there to be space for us to all be ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say like, I'm an activist, and purely because of annoyance. It's like
If I'm
really,
so pissed off, I'm gonna have to be an
it's
actor.
like, can you just leave people alone so I can do my thing?
Right.
It's like, I don't want to worry about all this other shit out there. It's like, if somebody
Right.
wants to be X, let them be X.
Go
As
ahead.
long as they're not an asshole, they're no
Yes.
asshole. It's
Yeah.
like, so I am an activist by annoyance, because in many ways it becomes like the issues that we argue about are distractions from us having to face ourselves.
Right.
Like the reason why we have groups against gay marriages or women's rights or this or that, and like, I mean, some are even more extreme,
Right.
is because they're not truly comfortable reflecting on themselves.
Right. Right.
Like, and I'm not saying they are any of that. I'm like, no, it's not that. It's the fact that as long as you can deflect on other people, you don't have to worry about yourself.
Right.
You don't have to dig in and go like, who am I? I
Right.
can I can be superficial enough by watching football on a Sunday, college football on a Saturday, have
Monday
my
Night
beers.
Football on Monday. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I can do that and work my hours and tell myself the lie that if I really put 80 hours in a week that like I'm really important. No, all of those are just ways that you distract yourself from facing yourself. Once you stop that distraction, it is an incredible ride
Yeah.
because it is scary.
Yeah.
It is sometimes lonely, but it's amazing. It's like a roller coaster. It's like you're at the top and you go like, I really need this.
Are we gonna make it?
It's one of
Right?
those,
Huh?
there's one of those rickety roller coasters as well.
An old wooden one, right? Yeah. No, totally. Totally.
Exactly.
No, I love that you said that because, you know, even for me, starting a business and doing all this, have been moments when I've gotten into a hole and been like, this isn't going to work. I don't know what's going to happen. And you can get in this spin and then something will happen and I'll think, I mean, something amazing could be right around the corner.
Yeah.
So I might as well just hope that there is something. I'll just keep working. I'll just keep doing what I'm good at. I'll keep showing up in the world and maybe something cool is right around the corner.
Yeah.
Right? And I think for me, having that kind of optimism doesn't mean I don't work. It doesn't mean I don't, you know, make sure that I'm doing my part. But I just really want to believe that that this life is interesting and it is scary and it is all those things, but that something can change. Something always does.
Yeah.
Right?
And we don't realize that most people that are either on that are on LinkedIn, and most people that'll have the ability to watch a podcast or a video, anything like that, actually have a life of luxury.
Yes.
We have problems. I'm not saying we don't have individual problems, but we're not living in, a refugee camp somewhere.
Right.
We're not living in being gay in Uganda. That's not the life.
Yes.
With that privilege comes a responsibility.
Yes.
And that's what I'm a white South African whose dad was head of political prisoners. I had a best education that you can think of, and I've had so many lucky breaks in my life.
Yeah.
I am extremely privileged.
Yeah.
With that privilege comes a responsibility towards myself and others.
Yeah.
Is that privilege means explore, push yourself to places where it feels uncomfortable, because the privilege gives you safety.
Yeah.
But that's the least human thing to be, is to be safe.
Yeah.
And going out and do that other job, not answering the emails at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Those are all things that you have in your control. Use your privilege, because in a flash, it's all gone.
Yeah.
In a flash, you're sitting somewhere and you're 80 years old drinking a beer. You're like, oh shit, that was a decision I should have made.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and that when I left my job at Google, I saw you right after that, shortly after that. I was there for 3 months and I woke up one day and thought, I cannot be this unhappy.
No.
Not for one more day. I cannot do this. I cannot go to this job and feel like I am trying to fit somewhere that is square peg, round hole. That's not even the half of it. I was so miserable.
Yeah.
Right. And so on my worst days of is this business going to work out? I'm like, you know what? My friend Gino says, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to get another 6-figure job?
Exactly.
He's like, you have a background. He's like, it's like if you took 4 steps back and took a product manager job, you'd still make 6 figures. It's just a real hard life you're living. And I'm like, all right. Thank you for the reminder, right? But I agree with you. In my misery, what am I bringing into the world? Nothing. Yeah. When I gave that up and took this risk, I could bring something new and interesting into the world and coach people and participate with founders. And I could do something that I could actually bring some life to. Still a lot of privilege, still a lot of, whatever. But it just I wasn't going to add more misery to a world of misery.
Yeah, I heard I can't even remember where it was, but it was something in the line of you can only know love if you know hate. It's like these two extremes, but you can only know happiness if you know unhappiness. Yeah. You can only know liberation if you actually know what it means to be caged. Yeah. And it's like we have to experience the bad. We have to experience the uncertainty to be able to get to those places where we go like, oh shit, I've learned this is amazing. But as long as we distract ourselves with whether that's gadgets in our hands or work or except rugby is obviously important.
Rugby's fine. Cocaine, no. Rugby.
Other sport, no. Those are distractions. But religion, all those, like, I'm not
Yeah.
saying drop all those. I'm just saying it's like when you surround yourself completely with just that, you're not allowing yourself to know the beauty of uncertainty. And you don't need other men for that.
Right.
Don't need other men for that. Like the beauty of you is the fact that you actually experience that. Yes, you have soundboards that you can have, but
Yeah.
you already know the decisions you're going to make.
Yes.
You already know it. You
Yeah.
just go and get a soundboard,
Right.
but you knew it already. Like the Google examples, like
Yeah.
you're not too scared for that.
Yeah.
So it's not that they need a soundboard. They're just too scared to make that jump because, and you look at how they're at the workplace, I'm just going to have more control, more control, more control. Get you everyone back in the office so I can have pointy fingers at them, you know.
Right. I have something to do with this finger.
Exactly.
Yeah. It was funny when I quit that job, I had a couple different men approach me and say, "That's a very brave thing you've done." And I was all, "I'm sorry, what's brave about it?" Like, brave is mothers making sure their children go to school in the Ukraine,
Yeah.
walking them to school. Like, that's brave, right?
Yeah.
Like, at that, I was like, I just quit a job. And they were like, "Well, I could never do that." And I'm all, "Yes, you could. You would have to just decide you were okay with the consequences of that salary not being the same. Of course you could. Of course you could do what I just did. Literally write an email and send it. It's not possible for you to do it too. You're saying you couldn't do it because you don't want the consequences. I get that. That's a choice. That's fine. But it's not brave.
No, it's because men have this echo chamber of comfort zones, of things like this is like so perfect, so stay in your world. Rugby. When South Africa won there's a great documentary called Chasing the Sun. When we won the 2019 Rugby World Cup, getting to the finals, not the favorites. And afterwards, they asked the coach and the captain, Siya Kolisi, how did you deal with the pressure? And he said the coach actually told the team before the time, there's no pressure. You know what pressure is? Pressure is someone not having food in South Africa, someone not having a house, somebody not having a job, someone getting killed. That's pressure.
Right.
You playing rugby in the finals of the Rugby World Cup, that's an honor.
Congrats.
There's no pressure. Like, let's get real. There's no pressure. And that kind of mindset is what we should embrace. It's like, this pressure is artificial. We create these artificial pressures. What's the worst that's going to happen? Because you live in a world of privilege.
Yeah.
And your privilege might be relative.
Yeah.
But what's the worst that's going to happen? Most of us have some form of safety net.
Right.
So go forth.
Yeah.
Be emotionally brave instead of just trying to be like, oh, I'm a man.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. Okay. So final question. And I think I'm going to guess I know the answer, but I'm still going to ask it. When you think about role models, who is someone that you feel like really has made an impact for you? Because I think a lot of times men, I mean, obviously your daughters and your wife, I know that. I mean, I'm not discounting them, but I think it's been interesting to me to read about male role models and how often men don't know who to point to. And so I'm curious, when you think about role models, who comes up for you?
Yeah, I have one, and that sets the bar for me. It's Nelson Mandela.
Exactly.
It's always been. It's like, it is for me.
You can't even beat that, right?
But it's not just that he had good judgment. It's the fact that, what would I do that I'm so convicted about that issue that I will go to jail for 27 years because of that?
Right.
And that is, come on, like, none of us are really that brave.
Right.
He was, and it's easy to look at him and then go, okay, when in doubt, what would he have said?
Right.
What would he have done? Because he always picked humans.
Right.
He didn't pick a group.
Right.
He didn't ask for revenge. He didn't pick any ethnic group or religious group or any nationality. It's like, just like human. And I had the privilege of, meeting him in person, and the love that just came from that. It was like, that's it. It also means that I'm not intimidated by anyone else.
Yeah.
Because I'm going like, dude, for me to be intimidated by anyone, it's like, it's Nelson Mandela. How close can you
You're
get to that?
somewhere over here, right?
Exactly. It doesn't matter who you, and I've been lucky enough to work with some,
Yeah.
important people in the world, but I'm like, never been intimidated because, come on, it's Nelson Mandela,
Yeah.
really,
Can
you
you,
know?
is there a win there? When I was,
Yeah, but
I think I may have told you this, when I was really young, I went to do a presentation at Bank of America, and I was like, I was so nervous, and I was sitting in the room, and a man came in and he sat down next to me. We were at the back of the room, and I was going to need to present, and he said, "Are you presenting today?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm up next." And he's like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Are you nervous?" And I was like, "Yes." And he said, "Listen, everybody in here when they woke up this morning had to go pee."
exactly,
And I was
exactly.
like, "Thank you for the feedback." I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "So just remember that. There's nothing fancy about any of these people." And I was like, "Okay." He was the president that I was, of course, that I was presenting to. So I get up and go to the front of the room, and he comes up and sits at the table and is like, "Hi, I'm so," and I was like, "Oh, he had to pee this morning." Right? Like, and I just, like, I think about, like, there are people in the world who can extend us a bit of space and compassion that gives us room to take a breath and realize, like, I'm
Yeah,
going to survive this presentation. I can do these things. I can take these risks. And I think when you talk about the love and compassion oozing off of Nelson Mandela, he could have decided to be a different person, and he chose every day who to be.
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
that's what we're asking. Like, can we make a choice to be not an asshole, right?
yeah,
And to show up in the world and say, can I make some space for somebody, right?
yeah.
To
I'm also inspired by humans just in general.
Yeah,
It's like I'm not inspired by powerful people. It's
yeah,
like, why? I don't interested. But we have people, Mormons live down the road because we have a Mormon church, and they walk by the house every day because they go check that the church is okay. And they always walk by, wave, smile, we have a chat,
yeah,
etc. I'm inspired by them because they're always friendly. They
yeah,
always chat. It's like there's all these beautiful moments throughout life that we get overwhelmed by all the bad shit that's happening in the world.
yeah,
And we forget these kind of moments. There was a movie many years ago called The Sandwich Years. And it's like that little bit of jam in the middle of a
yeah,
sandwich that we forget about. It's like we forget about those little moments of pleasure that happens all around us. A good meal made by somebody with love. We go to a restaurant, it's the same person that usually serves us, and we always have a chat with her, etc.
yeah,
I'm inspired by those humans who find meaning in their life in their own way. I don't have to agree with everything that they do, but they I look at them and I can see have enough moments of happiness in their lives that's not about pushing other people down. I go like,
right.
that is inspiring.
I
That
love,
is
I love that. Let's leave it there. I love that. That's so, so helpful. Thank you for coming and chatting with me. I knew we would have a good conversation, even if we didn't know what we were going to talk about.
always. Thank
Always.
you for having me. Really
Of
enjoyed it.
course.
Thank you.
If you're watching this, you'll notice that there's a little QR code down in the corner. If you would like to donate to Movember, that is, a great opportunity to give money towards men's health and mental and physical health. So if you want to donate, grab the QR code and send some money. So thanks, Hank.
Thank you.